What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG TCG video. Today, guys, we are going to be going over the final cover monster and its archetype for the upcoming Ancient Guardians. The Doremichord, I believe I might have pronounced that completely wrong. But that is the archetype that I'm going to be going over today. Now, I have just not that long covered the Abyss Abyss. Excuse me, I can't say that. It's really weird to say that without saying Abyss. And then the Bertai archetype as well for this set as well. But now we are going over the final one for the main cover set. I did kind of preview this a little bit in my Abyss video, which if you have not seen those, I will leave a link down in the description below to the playlist where you can see all the different card game news that I have covered, whether it's from the anime or videos like this. But this is going to be the final one. I'm very excited to be going over this, so let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna do the same format, which looking through the cards, it doesn't look like there is going to be an extra deck for this one. It looks like it's just gonna be pendulum monsters, spells, and traps. Yes, we're actually going over pendulum monsters. The first time, I think, since I've started doing these, that have actually covered a pendulum monster. So that's kind of exciting, I will say. So let's get into the list. So the first one we got is Doremichord Cutie, which I have to say I love the designs of these. I feel like this is like a combination of Yuzu or Zuzu Boyle's Melodious with kind of like a Aoi or Sky in the Dub Trickstar. I don't know, it kind of gives me that vibe with these monsters. It is a level 1 Earth Fairy Pendulum Effect monster and is a scale 8 monster with 100 attack and 400 defense. It's a very interesting to say the least that this is Fairy. I forgot Fairy was actually a type, to be honest, which I think the Heralds, which was the deck that Light used, actually is Fairy, so can't believe I did forget about that. So we're going to go over the Pendulum Effect, and then we'll go over the monster effects. So the Pendulum Effect, your Doremichord Pendulum monsters, Pendulum Summon cannot be negated. Okay, so a very simple one. So when you go over a Pendulum Summon of these monsters, they're not going to be able to, you can't not stop these Pendulum Summonings from happening. So you can't use a card effect to negate the Pendulum Summon. You get to go on no matter what. And it's Monster Effect. You can only use this card's name first, Monster Effect, once per turn. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add one Doremichord Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, except Doremichord Cutie. And if you have an even number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, Doremichord pendulum monsters you control gain 100 attack times their own pendulum scale. Oh geez, this is a very interesting one. I feel like I will say though, the Abyss one doesn't have like these very interesting things to this or like to their whole gimmick. This one does, because it looks like this one is dependent on odd and even numbers of the pendulum scale, which is very, very interesting to see the least. I don't think we've had a monster that does something like that, or an archetype. I could be completely wrong. I don't know every single card in this game. There's way more than 100 cards. There's like thousands of these cards. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting fact to say the least. But 100 attack, it's not that much, especially if like you have like a scale 1. That's only 100 attack points. So that's really not that much, and you have to have an even scale on the other side as well. It can't just be this side. You have to have an maybe not actually. Maybe this one will count. Or maybe you have, see, that's weird. It doesn't specific, if you have an even number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone. I'm assuming that has to be for another one, but I'm just going to go off the assumption that it is needed in another one, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. But the fact that you need another even pendulum scale to have this effect work kind of is a little bit restrictive, but if it's just this, and it's just a free way to gain attack points, if I'm wrong on that, but still 100 attack points really isn't much to say the least, but pretty interesting card nonetheless. Up next, we have Doremichord Dreamy. Which is very interesting, is that the front name, I love how they're doing it, because if you have ever been in like a band class or something like that, and they make you like learn the musical notes, that's what these like beginning parts are. Like, you know, you have like do, re, It's been so long since I've like taken a music class. Like I forgot do re mi fa sol la ti do. I think that's the way I had to learn it. Was we always had to keep doing that. In fact, we had to do multiple tests on doing that same rhythm. So it's kind of interesting that they're kind of following that kind of pattern. So it's a level 2 Wind Fairy Pendulum Effect monster with 700 attack and 400 defense, with its pendulum scale being 7. It's pendulum effect. It's literally the same effect. Your Doremichord Pendulum monsters, pendulum summon cannot be negated. You can only use this card's first monster effect once per turn, yada yada yada. If there is a Doremichord card in your pendulum summon, I'm never gonna get used to saying this name. You can special summon this card from your hand. Oh, interesting. So it's a free way to special summon. If you had an odd number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone and a Doremichord pendulum monster you control would be destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can destroy this card instead of one of that card. You can destroy this card instead of one of that card. So I guess if there's multiple cards being destroyed, you can save one card, I guess is what that's saying. Interesting. So it has the protection if a monster is going to be destroyed by an opponent's card effect. So if they try to torrential tribute your field, you can tribute this card and it can protect that monster on your field. So pretty interesting effect. I don't think that's not that bad of an effect. And then being able to special summon this pretty easily as long as you have pendulum summon. Another thing though is you have to have an odd pendulum scale, which I'm gonna look a little bit ahead and see it. I see a scale 5, there's a scale 3, and scale 1. Oh, I didn't even realize it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, sweet. That's actually pretty cool. I just looked through the entire list because I didn't even look at the pendulum scales. They are from 1 through 8, so there is no pendulum scale of 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Technically, 13 and 0 are pendulum scales that you can have, so they don't have those kind of pendulum scales. Maybe there's more support for these later on. Maybe we'll get some higher scales. Who knows? So that's pretty interesting. The fact, again, you have to have an odd pendulum scale, which maybe it's easier than I think it is, but again, that restriction of having to have that specific pendulum scale of being an odd number, which you have multiple changes. You have 1, 3, 5, or 7 to do this, so it's not as hard. Well, if it's 7, it would be literally the same card in the pendulum zone, which can work, but very interesting effect to say the least. Again, this whole thing of where you're having to use an odd or even, this is definitely going to be making some things a little bit trickier and a little bit more interesting to kind of play off of. Up next, we got our scale 6 up and ready. My Doremichord Elite. It's a level 3 Water Fairy Pendulum Effect monster, 1000 attack, 400 defense, pendulum scale 6. And it looks like it has the same effect as the pendulum effect. I think these all are going to probably have that effect, so I'm just going to assume that. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can target one spell and trap your opponent controls, return it to the hand. Okay, so you can get rid of some back row and add it back to your hand. Add it back to their hand so that you can get some more damage on them potentially or something like that. If you have an even number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, you take no battle damage from battles involving Doremichord pendulum monsters you control. Okay, so it protects you from damage, so if you wanted to use your life points for something else to help with some combos or something like that, it helps you protect your life points, and if you're on the very low life points, this helps you protect as well. Honestly, it's not really that bad, I don't think. Again, it has to do with the even thing, which I'm kind of noticing where its effect depends on its own pendulum scale I'm seeing as well, because this one is a pendulum 6 and the one I read first was a pendulum 8, and their effect is based off of even, which I think is just kind of hilarious that they kind of follow that pattern. So, pretty interesting effect there to be able to stop yourself from no damage. I don't think it's that bad at all. Up next, we have for Doremichord Fancia. It's a level 4 Fire Fairy Pendulum monster, which I think we're going through all the attributes because we had, I believe the first one was Earth. Yep, we had Earth, Wind, Water, and now we're having a Fire one. So it looks like we're going through all like the attributes of this, and I think it's pretty cool. It has a 16 attack, 400 defense, pendulum scale 5. Its pendulum effect is the same. It has that clause. During your main phase, you can take one Doremichord Pendulum monster from your deck, except that monster, and place it face up in your extra deck. Okay, this is gonna just play on how pendulum works. If you guys probably already know how pendulums work. When they're destroyed, they go to your extra deck. So basically, during your main phase, you can target one of your pendulum monsters, your Doremichord pendulum monsters, and place it face up in the extra deck, which I guess is pretty good. I think I never really understood that effect. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. In all the years I've played Yu-Gi-Oh, I think I've played Yu-Gi-Oh for around 8 years now, I would say, I have never played a pendulum deck. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I just always thought pendulums were really weird to learn to some degree. Now, I've tried it before, but it was never hard, and I always was confused on this effect. But I don't know. It seems interesting, I guess. So I do apologize if I don't really know what that means. I might do some research a little bit more on pendulum monsters. Pendulum monsters are definitely not my strong suit. I'm just going to say that. And if you have an odd number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, and a Doremichord pendulum monster you control were to be destroyed by battle, you can destroy this card instead. Okay, it's kind of similar to one of the effects of these monsters a little bit earlier. I think it was the Dreamy, I believe that was the one. Yep, it was like the Dreamy effect. So basically, you can have some protection. I'm also noticing that the odd pendulum scale monsters are having a lot of protection to it, which I think is pretty nice, to being able to protect your stuff from getting destroyed. This one is more by battle. The other one was by card effects. So now you have to deal with battling, and you have something to deal with your opponent's card effects. So not that bad as well. I don't think it's game-changing, but I think it's a pretty good effect for what this deck really needs. Up next, we have Sodor Record Gracia, level 5 Water Fairy Pendulum Effect monster. Level 5. We're getting a little bit higher than the levels now. It has 2100 attack and 1400 defense with a pendulum scale of 4. That's a pretty high one. And it looks like we might have something different from the pendulum effect. When you pendulum summon a Doremichord pendulum monsters, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or spell and trap cards. So basically, I guess it's similar to it, so where they can't disrupt it, but they can't use anything on it. Like, they are not allowed to do it when you pendulum summon a monster. So, not that bad of effect. And then its monster effect, it has the same thing. If this card is no more special summon, you can add one Doremichord spell and trap card from your deck to your hand. And if you have an even numbered pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, and your Doremichord pendulum monster attacks, your opponent cannot activate monster effects until the end of the damage. I wish it had card effects too, because I think it would have been it would be way better, because the thing with this is that you have to make sure that you get this card on the field, which, if you don't have the right pendulum scale for it, you're going to have to tribute this monster, which, luckily, you can pendulum summon, so it's not that bad, but I feel like this one might be more towards it to be in your pendulum zone, maybe. I feel like that's kind of the way that this card might be a little bit more useful, but not saying its monster effects aren't that bad. I think they're not that bad at all, to be completely honest. So yeah, that's pretty interesting for this card. Up next, and I'm going to say this, I actually really like this one's design. Doremichord Angela. It's a level 6 Fire Fairy Pendulum effect. Okay, we're really starting to go up the levels now. It has 2300 attack, 1400 defense, pendulum scale 3, and it has the same effect as the level 5 one. And it has the cards, one monster, yada yada yada. During your pain phase, you can tribute one Doremichord Pendulum monster, and if you do, special summon one Doremichord Pendulum monster with the pendulum scale that is 2 higher or lower than that tribute monster from your deck, except Doremichord Angela. And if you have an odd number of pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, and your Doremichord Pendulum monster attacks, your opponent cannot activate spell and trap cards or effects until the end of the damage step. Okay, I think this one is a little bit stronger than the other one, because I feel like where we're kind of at in this game, I feel like a lot of back rows are more important these days, because especially how trap cards are more implemented, so that's pretty interesting. This first one, I gotta read this one. During your main phase, you contribute one to a Mecha Pendulum monster, and if you do special... Okay, so you tribute a monster, and you get to get literally a level 7... Well, it would be it'd be a scale 5 or higher monster from your deck, it looks like. Hold on, let me read that again. I just got to make sure. Tribute monster is... Yeah, from your deck. So you can basically target that and you can get a pendulum monster from your deck as long as it's 2 higher, which honestly is not that bad. Again, searching for it, it's not that bad at all, is what I'm saying. Again, you're going to have to pendulum summon this monster with a scale 6, which obviously can still work. You have scale 7 and scale 8 you can work with. Excuse me. Up next, we got the scale 2 monster, Doremichord Beauty, a level 7 Earth Fairy Pendulum Effect monster, 2500 attack and 24 defense, and it has the same effect as the other two. You can only use this card's first effect, monster effect once per turn. Quick effect, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls. During this turn, if that card would leave the field, banish it. If you have an even number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, you could target one face-up spell and trap card your opponent controls instead. Oh, so if you can target an effect monster your opponent controls during this turn, if that card would leave the field, banish it. Okay, so basically if a card leaves on your opponent's field, it's banished, but if you have an even scale, you can do it double. Which I think it's not going to be that bad, because I feel like as long as you have an odd or even, which is very possible to do, it's not like they very specifically, like say your left pendulum scale has to be odd or something like that. I'm glad it doesn't do that, because that's going to make this deck very hard. But kind of looking at how many different odd and evens that you have, I think it's a little bit more balanced than I think it originally was, because it's very easy to have an odd and even one. Like say you can have a scale 1 and then you have a scale 8. And it would work perfectly because you would have an odd and even so you can activate these effects. So honestly, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. And then once per turn at the start of the damage step, when this card battles a monster with an attack that is equal to or higher than the lowest pendulum scale in your pendulum zone times 300, you can destroy that monster. Interesting. So if an attack is equal or higher the lowest pendulum scale. Oh, then that's a very easy to destroy. Say you have the scale 1, which I'll look at it right away. This is the big one, Colia, which is a scale 1. You times that by 300. That's 300 attack. And since the attack is higher, that monster is destroyed. Holy crap, that's not honestly that bad of effect. So if you have a monster that is a really big threat on the field, whether it's in terms of attack points or an effect, and it has that higher attack point, you would just destroy it. Now, obviously, you got to make sure your opponent doesn't disrupt that, but other than that, that's not honestly a bad effect, to be honest. So yeah, and then the final one we're going to be going over is the one that I alluded to last time in the Abyss video, Doremichord Colia, level 8 Wind Fairy Pendulum Effect monster with attack of 2700 and defense 2500. Pendulum scale 1. I want to quickly, before I go into effect, I've now noticed a problem, and this is why I feel like we needed at least one more monster with pendulum scale 9, because here's the problem with this card I see off the bat. How in the world are you going to pendulum summon this? Just off of the monsters alone, and maybe these spell and trap cards might help that in a second. But right now, looking just at the monster, you can't pendulum summon this monster because of the fact that this is a level 8 monster that you're dealing with. So you're not going to be able to do anything with this monster in terms of its monster effect unless you can get the scale higher. So maybe we can do something about that. And it has the same effect. You can only use this card's name second and third effect once per turn each. Okay, so we're getting a little bit different now. You can target one face-up card your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of your opponent's turn. If you have an odd number pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, you can target 2 cards instead. Hold up a minute. So you can now target 2 cards and basically negate their effects. So if you have a monster that's having a problem and maybe like a field spell or something like that, you can negate those and then you can just go wailing on your opponent. Really not that bad of an effect. And then you could target one face-up card your opponent controls. Oh, wait, did I read the wrong effect? Oh, wait a minute, I did read the wrong effect, sorry. You can special summon this card from your hand by tributing 2 pendulum monsters. My mistake. So, tributing 2 pendulum monsters. I'm assuming this also means from your pendulum zone. I'm going to assume that you can do that as well. So, the thing with pendulum monsters is unless you use a spell card, you can't get rid of your pendulum zone. So if you have a pretty bad pendulum zone and you want to benefit it more with the cards in your hand, if this card allows you to take the 2 pendulum monsters in your pendulum zones to be able to tribute some of this monster, not only can you get this monster on the field, but then you can reset your pendulum zone the way you want it. Say you have like a 3 or a scale 3 and a 7. Obviously that's kind of bad right now because they're both odd, so monsters with even effects cannot really do it. But if you tribute those 2 monsters, you can get this card on the field, and then if you had some Doremichord monsters like an odd and even, you can set those on the scale, and now you can use the effects to the benefits that you need to. So honestly, there might be some benefit if I'm thinking of how that works correctly. Now let me read the third effect. Let me actually go back in the order. When the effect of a monster on the field with attack less than or equal to 300 times the highest pendulum scale in your pendulum zone is activated, quick effect, you can destroy that monster. Okay, that's a little bit of a interesting one. Oh, but it's attack less. Never mind. I thought I said attack higher. Basically the same effect as the last one, but it's just switching it. So you have a scale 8 on your field. That's 2,400 attack points. If your monster has lower than 2,400 attack points, then it's destroyed. Not as strong as the other one, because I feel like your opponent, it depends on the deck they play, because I feel like with most decks they're going to have pretty strong monsters, at least up to 25, and the highest right now is 24. But if you play some other pendulum cards that can go up to scales 12 and 13 or something like that, we'll say 12 for example, because I think the only 13 one that I can remember is the Supreme King Gate Infinity. That was the only one I can remember that was scale 13. But if you have a scale 12 on the field, I believe that's 3,600, so you can deal with that. But if your opponent has a 4,000 attack point monster, like a while back we covered the Stardust supports, shooting Majestic Star Dragon was 4,000 attack points. Yeah, that's not going to really be as helpful. I think this one definitely has the weaker effect for that one than the Beauty one that we covered earlier. So yeah, it could be a little bit better, but it's honestly not the worst thing in the world. Now we can start moving on to the spell and trap cards. It looks like we have 2 spells and 2 traps, and then we have, oh, I didn't even notice it, at the bottom you have Wavering Eyes is going to be in this set as well, so that's pretty cool. It's another old card. Just wanted to mention that as well. So the first spell card we got is Doremichord Scale. It's a normal spell card. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. 1. Apply these effects in sequence according to the number of Doremichord Pendulum monster cards you control with different names. Ooh, that's an interesting one, especially since I see 3, 5, and 7. This is going to be a late card. I'm going to say 3 or more. Return 1 card from your pendulum zone to your hand. If you do, place 1 Doremichord pendulum monster from your face-up extra deck to your pendulum zone. Oh, that kind of helps earlier with the whole face-up pendulum, which aren't they, when they destroyed, aren't they face-up in your extra deck? Yeah, they are, actually, now thinking about it. They are placed face up, but I guess you can have it in your extra deck face down, so they flip it face up. That way you can then put it into the scale earlier or later with this card. So that's pretty interesting. 5 or more. Special summon 1 Doremichord Pendulum monster from your hand. Okay, it's a free special summon. Also with the 3-1, it also is kind of the scenario I was going through earlier. If you're trying to get another pendulum monster to kind of fit the odd and even combo, you can do that. And if there's a say for example you need an odd pendulum scale and you had 2 evens on the field, get rid of the one that you need to get rid of, whether it's the lower one or the higher one, depends on what one is in the extra deck. Say you have the scale 7 in your extra deck and you have a scale 5 and a 3 for some reason. Get rid of the 5 one, or no, wait, what would that be? Oh, how about this? 8 in the extra deck, excuse me, I realized I did all 3 odds. Get rid of the 5, now you have a 3 and 8 scale. There you go. That was my bad, I kind of counted that wrong. And then 7 or more. Destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls. Okay, so basically you just get a nuke if you have 7 or more, which there's only 8 in this deck, and it looks like you have to do Doremichord Pendulum monsters. So if you don't have 7 or 8 of them already with different names that you control, you're kind of screwed, which I guess maybe you can also control in your pendulum scale as well, so I think that might be a benefit as well, because you're going to already have 2 in the scale, and then maybe you can get, well, you would have to get 5 more at least 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you would have to have like 5 of these monsters on the field, which is easy with pendulum summoning, so maybe it will still work out. You would have to have the scale 1 and 8 in your pendulum scale, and then go through the 3, 2 through 7 to get out the rest of the monsters, which is possible. So maybe it's not as bad as that, but you would have to get all of those monsters onto the field at least to be even able to do this. So this is more of a late game card than anything. Up next, we have Doremichord Harmonia. It's a spell field. Wait, why does it say it like that? It's a field spell. Some reason they wrote it as a spell field. I guess maybe that's... I don't know why they called it like that, actually. They've said field spell before. 1. Select and activate one of these effects. You can only select these effects of Doremichord Harmonia once per turn each. One of them is add 1 Doremichord Pendulum monster from your face-up extra deck to your hand. Same way, one with the last one. Have 1 Doremichord card in your Pendulum Zone gain Pendulum Scales equal to its level until the end of this turn. That's what I kind of was wondering, because something I was mentioning earlier with that level 8 monster, Colia, how in the world are you going to pendulum summon that? But with this, you can do that very easily, because if you look at the Pendulum 8 one from earlier, it's a level 1. So you use this spell card, it gains a level, or it gains a scale equal to its level, so it have a scale 9, then you can pendulum summon this card without having to tribute monsters on your field. Then you can just go ham on your opponent with these effects. So that makes it a little bit better, actually. It does. And then you have, if you control 3 or more Doremichord Pendulum monster cards with different names that have odd number pendulum scales or have even number pendulum scales, you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So wait, if you control 3 or more pendulum monster cards with different names that have odds. Okay, so it doesn't matter. As long as you have a pendulum monster in your pendulum zone, you get to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Not that bad. I guess it's a little bit more lenient than the other ones. I feel like I'm missing something with this effect, because I feel like that's just weird. You could just say that if you have a pendulum monster card with different names that have odd number pendulum scales, or have... I guess that might be... Maybe this means you have to have both odd and even. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe you have to have separate odd and even, or like you have to have both pendulum scales be odd and even. Which, if that's the case, that's a little bit worse, because that's a little bit more restrictive, because only half of your cards are going to work. I'm hoping this means both. And someone that is a little bit more experienced with pendulums, let me know if these cards are specifically saying both pendulum scales need to be even and or odd, or can one be each and these effects work. Please let me know, because that actually depends on the whole thing on if these cards are good or not, to be completely honest. Now we're going into the trap cards. The first trap card we have is Doremichord Musica. It's a normal trap card. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Select one of these effects to activate based on the pendulum scale of Doremichord pendulum monster cards you control. Okay, maybe this is definitely going more towards you have to have both. Odd number. Special summon 1 Doremichord pendulum monster with an odd number pendulum scale from your face-up extra deck. Is that the same thing for both? Yep. Oh, and then it has both an odd and even effect. Target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. Oh, so basically, depending on if you have an odd or even number, you basically get a free one from your extra deck. And if you have both an odd and even, you get to destroy a card on your opponent that your opponent controls. Not that bad. It's a once per turn effect, but... And you can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Oh, so... Okay, that might be a little bit different. I don't know. So, it seems like a pretty interesting one to be able... I like the third one a little bit better. I mean, getting a card is good, but... I don't know. Being able to destroy your opponent's field, I think, is a little bit better, because you definitely want to get rid of your field, or your opponent's field, especially if there's some threats that you cannot deal with. So, yeah, not that bad of a trap card. And then for the final trap card we're going to be going over is Doremichord Formal. It's a counter trap card. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. When your opponent activates a monster effect or a spell or trap card, and you control a Doremichord card in your Pendulum Zone, shuffle 1 Pendulum monster from your face-up extra deck into the deck, then apply these effects. Pendulum monsters you control are unaffected by the opponent's effects, which is not that bad. Cards in your Pendulum Zone cannot be destroyed by that opponent's effect, so if they're trying to get rid of your Pendulum monsters so that you can't Pendulum summon anymore, this card helps protect that. And then cards in your Pendulum Zone cannot be banished by the opponent's card effects. So if they try to banish it, it won't work. Love this trap card. I actually don't think this is a bad trap card at all. To being able to have this protection from... Sure, it's a trap card, so you have to wait until your next turn to actually activate it, or at least the next turn of the duel. So, it works out. I actually do like this trap card quite a bit. And guys, that's going to be it. The other one is the Wavering Eyes card, which is not where we're going to really focus on. So, what do I think about this? It's a pretty interesting deck, I will say the least. I definitely got to do a little bit more research on the pendulums. I am so weak when it comes to pendulum monsters because normally I never really focused on pendulum monsters when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Just because I was just used to the like fusion synchro and Xyz. I was just not ready for pendulums, especially since how complicating pendulums are. I just really was not someone that can do that. So, I'm definitely going to do a little bit more research on the pendulum monsters, but overall, I don't think they're that bad at all. I don't think they're, like, game-changing, like, meta-wise, but they have a pretty interesting concept with the odd and even. Again, I feel like this more determines if I was reading them right, and I do apologize, I'm not the best one when it comes to pendulum monsters, I do apologize for that, but I just never really had an interest of playing pendulum monsters, to say the least. We'll say, though, the monsters looked really cool. I really did like a lot of their designs. Again, it kind of reminded me of, like, a fusion of Melodious and Trickstars a little bit from the design of those decks, and I think they looked pretty cool, to say the least. The effects... If you can have odd and even pendulum scales in both of your zones and these effects can work, then this deck is not really that bad. But if both pendulum scales have to be an odd or even, then that definitely hurts it a lot more, because then you're too restrictive on it. Because for some monsters' effects to work, they have to have even, but for some, they have to have odd. So say that you both have to have an even pendulum scale, and you have one odd and one even. None of your effects can work, which is not good at all. You do not want that to happen, and I wish they didn't do that, but I like the idea they were trying to go with it. They're kind of more dependent on the scales. They kind of make it a little bit more, like, you have to kind of think when you pendulum summon, okay, do I want to do this scale and try to do it this way, or do I want to try this to kind of gain more effect-wise for this monster? I don't know. It's a really complicated one. I guess maybe I'm going to assume that it can be both, just to make it a little bit easier. It both has to be at least an odd or even. If one side is odd or one's even, then all effects can work. Because I hope that's the case, because that makes it a lot better. So, yeah. In terms of all three of the ones we got introduced to Bertai, the Abyss, and in this deck, out of all of them, I think the most impressive one, to be completely honest, was the Bertai one. I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I think that one was a little bit more interesting. I like the cool new unique way to synchro summon monsters. And plus, I think the effects are a little bit more... I don't think they're better, but I think they're... Well, I think they're a little better, but not groundbreaking. I think Bertai has some potential with some synergy with other decks. And sure, these ones are going to be in synergy. It can be synergy with some other decks as well. Like, I feel like you can probably do a pretty decent build with Pendulum monsters with this Doremichord monsters, but... Out of all of them, I think the Bertai was the most interesting. Then probably this deck, I will say, though, the Abyss ones were a little lackluster, I would say. I mean, I still think they were pretty okay, but I don't know. I just feel like these ones were a little bit more impressive in my thoughts. But again, that's my opinion. I'm not a meta player, so don't take this into consideration. Like, I think these are going to be like how they would go into the meta. That's not at all. I just going up the ones that impressed me the most, to be completely honest. But that is going to be it for my review part of this, and now I'm going to go into what I've been doing for the other two, and that's going to go over what characters from the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Structures manga do I think they can use these. Yes, I'm going to do this again. If you guys are new to these OCG TCG videos, with these more specific ones that are not related to the anime, what I like to do is add a little twist to these, and try to put them on how... or what character in the OCG Structures manga, which is the current manga that's going on, what deck would, or what character, excuse me, would these decks fit with and have a potential of playing in the OCG Structures manga, since they have a tendency to switch decks from time to time. So let's get right into that. So the immediate one I thought of right off the top of my head that would actually, I feel like, really perfectly fit with this character is a Giha. I really do think that this deck really fits the kind of tone of her deck. I look back at the only deck that we've seen, or at least where I read up upon in the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Structures manga, or at least do I know to a stand. I know that she duels in Chapter 20, I do know that, but I have not paid any attention to it. I don't want to pay attention to it because I don't want to know what happens until I catch up. But I look at her last deck, the only deck we saw, which was the Trap Tricks deck, and I feel like to some degree you can see some similarities between the Trap Tricks monsters and these these monsters. It's a weird name. I don't think I'm ever going to get used to these monsters' names, but I feel like just from the comparison of how closely these cards represent each other, or to some degree, like I said before, I felt like these Doremichord monsters would really fit her, to be completely honest, if they wanted to do something different. Now, I will counter-argue this because of the fact that I don't even know if a Giha will switch decks like these kids have been doing, because I remember back in the chapter that we got with a Giha, and she spent so much time trying to get Trap Tricks cards for her deck, like as placemats for her deck, because or sleeves for her cards, and since I feel like she's more in love with the Trap Tricks to kind of do that, I feel like she would just stick with Trap Tricks during the or like during this series, which I could be completely wrong. Maybe she will switch these cards, but I feel like she more was stick to the ones she is more comfortable with, but I have really no idea. I think she might do the whole switching thing, or where she'll switch decks, but we would have to wait and see on that. And the other one is Light. I feel like Light is just the only other character that can really fit it. I feel like Shoma, I think this is the first deck that I don't think Shoma really fits with, to be completely honest. I just really don't think this kind of like pendulum music girls kind of fits Shoma's style, which again, I guess Shoma can use really any deck that he wants to, but I don't think it fits. It definitely doesn't fit Dark. It definitely doesn't face Strong, or doesn't feel like a deck that Strong would use, Tendo would use. Even Misguide, I don't think it would feel right. I feel like Light is the only other character, I guess Gobu as well, I don't think it would fit with him either. So Light is the only other one, and funny enough, these are actually fairy monsters, so it's not the first, it wouldn't be the first time she used fairy monsters. Her first deck, her Herald monsters, are fairy type monsters, so it could fit. But another thing I see as well is, I looked at both of her decks, and a lot of things that I've seen with her decks is it's really like anime-like decks. Because I look at her Herald deck, but it combines stuff like with Cyber Angels. You had like the Cyber Petite Angel, you had the Angel Machine Ritual, or Machine Angel Ritual, excuse me, and you had cards that were from the other series. Heck, you had Time Lords out of all things in her deck, and then this current deck that she's using in Chapter 13, which the review will be out sometime soon. In fact, I am probably going to be doing 14 sooner than I was anticipating. I feel like it would be really cool just to get this chapter out as well, because Chapter 14 just came out and it was just translated, so I want to get into that as soon as I can, so be on the lookout for those chapter reviews. But I want to kind of, with this, or with Light, I feel like this deck, just with the way she's just been dueling with these anime-like cards, I feel like this doesn't fit, though I guess you can make an argument since they kind of resemble, like I was saying earlier, with how they're kind of close to like a hybrid of Melodious and Trickstars. I guess maybe you can make an excuse for that, but I feel like they're going to be more towards the anime base for Light, at least for the last two decks that she's had, so maybe she'll still use it, but I think if there's going to be any character that uses it, I think a Giha makes more sense than Light, but I would not be surprised at all if Light ended up using these cards for herself. And guys, that is going to be it for this OCG TCG video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't believe we actually got through all the Ancient Guardians already. Like, I've been really enjoying this series a lot. I hope you guys are enjoying too, even if you're just like anime fans, like you come for the Sevens reviews and you are just starting to watch these, you know, for some spare time. I hope you're enjoy these kind of videos, and I hope that you're able to learn something, or at least hope you're able to learn something with this, especially since this was probably a little bit more complex than the other ones, in my opinion, just more so because I'm not the best with pendulums, because again, I have not really played pendulums at all. I've only seen a couple of pendulums before, but I've never played them, so Yeah, definitely would like to know what your guys' thoughts on this. And if you're a Pendulum player, do you see this playing these cards? I mean, I think it's just cool in general that we're getting Pendulum support. I really do think it's amazing that we're actually getting some Pendulum support, especially since Pendulums have been on a downward spiral since a good amount of cards have been banned that was really good for Pendulum decks. So, yeah, that kind of hurts Pendulums a little bit, which they were broken to begin with, let's be honest, but still, it's cool to see that they're actually getting some support. And I hope we get a little bit more support on these and like see if they'll go to like the scale 0 and then 9 through 13 if they want to do it like that, or at least up to 9 and 12. I think it would be really cool to see those as well. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.